Well, would you look at that? The man who added over $7 trillion to the national debt and deficit in just one term, before COVID, actually, before you get to COVID, you have over $4 trillion added to the debt and deficit because of the historically large tax cuts he gave to corporate America. And then, of course, you have the over 200,000 manufacturing jobs that he shipped overseas as he was riding on the Biden economy. And then COVID struck, and now his solution to absolutely everything is tariffs. Just you talk about the tariffs with Chinese steel. That's a bit different because they were dumping lower quality steel into the country. That's why the Biden administration hadn't taken those tariffs off, because it helps to discourage China from continuing to do that. But when you're talking about putting tariffs onto absolutely everything, 200% tariffs here and there, and we watched on Maria Bartiromo, as he pointed out, I say big numbers. I say 100% tariffs, 200% tariffs, 500% tariffs. The point is, basically, he's just bluffing and he's not going to do it. But of course, he would do it. You know what I mean? So let's get into a little bit of this study. 68% of economists surveyed by Wall Street Journal deemed Trump worse for inflation than Harris. The Wall Street Journal published a survey on Monday that reported that when it came to inflation, there was one definitive candidate whose economic policy plans would make it far worse: former President Donald Trump. 50 economists responded to the survey, which took place from October 4th to the 8th. The quarterly survey was last conducted in July before President Joe Biden dropped his bid for reelection and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. And Trump's numbers pointed to higher inflation then as well. And this is from the study. Of the 50 economists who responded to the survey's questions on inflation, 68% said prices would rise faster under Trump than under Harris. That was up from 56% in July. So we went from 56% to 68%. Only 12% of the economists thought inflation would be higher under a Harris presidency, while the remainder saw no material difference between the candidates. Quote, both candidates have policies that are inflationary, said Dan Hamilton, director of the Center for Economic Research and Forecasting at California Lutheran University. But in a change from their July forecast, Hamilton and his colleague Matthew Finnop now see a second Trump term producing faster price increases because of the former president's tariff plans. Quote, since July, it's become apparent to us that Trump is even more anti-free trade than Harris, Hamilton said. That's almost 7 out of 10 economists saying that Trump's economic plan would make inflation worse. And again, like whenever Donald Trump's being interviewed by a reporter or an economist, whoever it is, when they tell him, most economists say that tariffs across the board would just be a domestic income tax, would just be a tax on domestic consumers. And then he's like, no, 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 that wouldn't happen. They say that now, but they'll see differently. Again, as I point out, one of the telltale signs that somebody is not very intelligent is when they think everything is so simple. But if you have a lower level of intelligence, that's okay. There's levels to everything. But it's when you try that's what matters, because you don't have to be a genius. If you actually try to learn, if you try to learn from mistakes, you go through data, you learn about how things work. Then we're all human beings. We're smart enough. So in addition to Donald Trump being incredibly unintelligent, probably more importantly, he is a very uncurious and unserious man. So let's see what Paul Krugman has to say. This is what he pointed out. This is as close to unanimity as the profession gets. All right, so here we go. These are the numbers here that we just went over, from 56% in July to 68% now. Yep, those are the numbers. So let's see. Inflation wasn't the only point where Trump's numbers were bigger than Harris's. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported the Committee for a Reasonable Federal Budget estimates Trump's plans would widen federal budget deficits by $7.5 trillion over the next decade, more than twice the expected increase under Harris. And this is pretty common. This is pretty typical. Republicans in my lifetime have been able to sell the dream and the complete lie that the economy performs better under them. But it doesn't. It just doesn't, because the Republican Party has become really not all that conservative and just more corporate. Is the Democratic Party corporate? Yes, absolutely, but not as corporate and corrupt as the Republican Party. These people, they celebrated the giant tax cut for corporations, which is why Donald Trump added so much to the deficit. Even before you get to COVID, obviously, we're going to have to spend a lot of money for COVID and for a pandemic. But before you get to that, he cut taxes, which defunds the government. You know what I'm saying? And then and he's still saying now we're going to make up with the deficits with growth. You know, we're going to have so much growth it'll make up for it, but it never goes that way. And Republicans have been trying to sell that shit for longer than I've been alive. For over 40 years they've been selling this BS, and it never works. So, this is just more of the same old. George W. Bush, he wrecked the economy. Barack Obama comes in, he has to clean it up. Then Donald Trump gets in office, he rides off Obama's economy, then he messes it up. Joe Biden comes in, he has to clean it up once again. And that's pretty much how the cycle has gone all my life. Hey now, thank you so much for tuning in here at Politics and Paper. If you like what I do and you support my work, go ahead and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it and really helps to support what we do here.